What really gives me hope in healthcare marketing is that you never stand in the way of somebody that has experienced something so deeply that they've navigated their entire career based off of it. And I think those are the people that are holding positions of leadership in large health systems, small health systems, critical access hospitals, federally qualified health centers. And I think they're truly trying to solve a problem. And I think they genuinely do care. The challenge that I would just want to pose is making sure that we're not setting up infrastructure that gets in the way.
New choices, new players, new models of care. You know consumer first healthcare is everywhere. For us to build the future, to see what's new, we gotta look at the world from a different point of view. Consumer innovation ain't going away. I say it's here to stay. Today it leads the way. We gotta drop the silos. We're all the same team. Experience, business, tech, and marketing. So join us now. Join the revolution. Consumer first health is the evolution. Status quo or like status no. Yeah, this is the healthcare rap. Yo, come on, let's go.
Hey, welcome back to the leading podcast about consumer-centered health. We highlight innovators who are bridging the gap between sick care and well care, influencing change in the industry, and empowering consumers with cool new ways to engage in their health and wellness. We're also having some fun along the way. I'm Jared Johnson, and this is episode 458. Today, we have the Flava of the week about taking professional risks. How does author and guest shark Matt Higgins encourage us to approach risks, and how can his words impact our individual journeys? I'll talk about that. Then Keaton Wright, founder of Target Continuum, tells us about changes in the air for healthcare marketers, his POV on AI and healthcare, and why he's more bullish than ever about what's coming around the corner for those who are working to connect people with care. It's time for the awesomeness, y'all. Are you ready? Let's go.
Flava of the week.
It's time for me to pass on some words of wisdom that have the capacity to shape others' lives in the same way they've shaped mine. Recently, I reread the book Burn the Boats by Matt Higgins. You may recognize him as an investor, former NFL executive, and a guest shark on ABC's Shark Tank. Burn the Boats talks about achieving your full potential to achieve greatness by tossing Plan B overboard. It builds on the phrase that originated from historical anecdotes where leaders symbolically destroyed their ships upon arrival to prevent retreat and forced their troops to conquer the new territory. Now, because I've received significant words from colleagues and friends at important times during my professional journey, I wanted to do the same for you in the likelihood that at least one of you will benefit from hearing them. Maybe the amount of time I spend speaking with founders has gradually rubbed off on me. Maybe hearing from so many business owners has gotten in my head, or maybe it's due to several recent conversations with colleagues who are actively listening to signals that their head and heart are giving them about making a change. Whatever the reason, a phrase stuck out from this book. The risks that never pay off are the ones you don't take. I'll say it one more time. The risks that never pay off are the ones you don't take. Higgins went on to explain this. He said, I don't want to pretend that things always work out. I won't tell you that you can have it all, and no one can guarantee success. With every pursuit, something will be lost. Consider everything you might sacrifice. Time with your family, your savings, your chance to do whatever else you might be tempted by. But then remember the possible rewards, tangible and intangible. Spend more time on your why than on your how, at least at first. Decide that this is going to be the journey of your life, and the individual successes or failures along the way are just chapters in a much larger story. The counterintuitive idea is to embrace that our relationship with risk is fundamentally inverted. We're led to believe that we must identify and develop the theoretical solution to a problem before we assume the risk. This is otherwise known as prudence. When we require a fully baked solution to a problem in order to pursue a goal, we deny ourselves a chance to prove the depth of our ability to perform under duress. In a later chapter, he applies this thinking specifically to those who are walking the incremental path in their professional career. Here's what he said about that. The incremental approach is why I urge people to escape corporate hierarchies whenever they can. For someone who aspires to more, it becomes a long waste of time. You need to resist attempts to lock you in place or limit your growth. I tell people not to be afraid to quit their jobs if they know they deserve more and don't see a path to getting there. It's much faster to take a leap up the ranks in someone else's hierarchy. And yes, of course, stay at a job if you love it, but only if you love it. You don't have to leave, but you need to always remember that you can and should if your growth is being stunted, unquote. So listen, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if it helps you with the decision that you're considering, I encourage you to follow what your head and heart are telling you. Remember, the risks that never pay off are the ones you don't take. Let's put this phrase into practice and find ways to bravely move forward on behalf of ourselves and those whom we serve in our professional work. That's another way that we'll build the healthcare of tomorrow, and that's the Flava of the week. Hey y'all, I'm here with Sina Arham, founder of Friday's Health. Sina, what do you think is broken in the traditional approach to metabolic health, and what are you doing to flip the script?
Let's be honest, the moment in metabolic health is being driven by the GLP-1 receptor agonist class of medications, right? We finally have something that is addressing metabolic health, obesity, and type 2 diabetes in an elegant fashion, right? It's efficacious, it's manageable for patients. And so I think we're having our moment in metabolic health in that the old guard of tackling metabolic health and obesity has a lot of stigma attached to it, a lot of shame and blame and guilt.
Thanks, Sina. Visit joinfridays.com for more information and tell them you heard about it from the Healthcare Wrap.
Healthcare Wrap is sponsored by Cyril. Whether you're trying to drive patient volume as a healthcare provider, boost membership enrollment as a health insurer, drive improved adherence rates in pharma, or deepen strategic B2B partnerships throughout the healthcare ecosystem, Cyril can help you with your go-to-market efforts and growth targets, enabling you to reach the clinical and financial goals of your healthcare organization. For more information, go to Cyril.com. That's CYRALL.com.
All right, everyone, let's get into the flow. Today, I'm here with Keaton Wright. You're on LinkedIn at all. You have seen Keaton in this space. So let me welcome you in. Keaton, welcome to the Healthcare Wrap.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. Yeah, happy to be here.
Again, I feel like a lot of people know you. And there's this phenomenon that goes on where if people engage with your content, they feel like they know you.
Yeah, right.
And so I have a feeling a lot of people feel like they know you, but let's help them get to know you a little bit better when you're introducing yourself to somebody who doesn't know you. What do you tell about yourself, about like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm an agency founder. We founded Target Continuum about 8.5 years ago with the mission to connect patients to great care. And we're a performance marketing shop for the most part, but I think that's overly generalized. Honestly, we really specialize in activation. We specialize in patient acquisition to help service lines grow. So most often what we've seen at Target Continuum is that when hospitals, health systems, all the way down to our nonprofit and philanthropic endeavors with federally qualified health centers and rural health centers, we just see that they're having a problem pushing the right types of volume, the right types of mixes. So we've helped them do that. Aside from that, firm up girl dad, got one 4-year-old at home and another one on the way. And I'm a glutton for punishment. I love performance and endurance sports. It goes hand in hand with that performance agency. I love ultra marathons and Ironmans. And I think anybody on LinkedIn that has that LinkedIn level relationship with me knows that I do some crazy things as a hobby. And then I like to think we're doing some crazy things in healthcare marketing too.
Do you want to give a quick little example of your experience at, was it Mount Hood recently?
Yeah, we did a 42-mile circumnavigation of Mount Hood. So me and one of my buddies flew out there and ran for 12 hours. Sounds exhilarating, but it's what makes me sleep well at night. So that's my getaway for sure. Just run until I can't run anymore. But no, it was beautiful. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, all right, let's get into this, Keaton, because I think it's safe to say there's just a lot of change in the air for healthcare marketers. Like there's so much going on. I wouldn't use the word uncertainty, but like that's how it feels. That's how it comes off. Sometimes there's just so much and we're like, where do we go? Like everyone's looking more than ever that I've ever seen in this industry. People are just looking for others to kind of help validate. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. And I think it comes in two categories, right? There are new opportunities and there are new challenges. Let's start with the opportunities. That's probably always a better place to see or to start with. What are you seeing in terms of new opportunities for marketers in this space? Maybe just things that you're seeing out there in the industry.
Yeah. I think I'd start off first with that I would want to cover the uncertainty side. And that's if you're not feeling uncertain, you probably aren't ingesting enough content on LinkedIn. The algorithms reward attention and our entire country has been a dopamine system of uncertainty and scare tactic news. So I would just want everybody to know that everybody's feeling it, whether they're admitting it or not. But I do think it's by design, right? the AI taking over your job, the AI replacing you in the next 6 months, and this, that, or the other. That content is designed to get attention. That's why it feels like it's everywhere. And I think it's really easy to start interpreting that as fact because it's everywhere all the time. But in reality, it's just what the algorithm is rewarding. And I'd like everybody to have a little bit of breathing room and realize that the pragmatic approach to the innovations that we're seeing is probably the best bet. I think we talk clients off of the quote unquote cliff quite often. And typically it revolves around, look, just scale back just a little bit, the hype you're hearing, because somewhere between that hype and the AI naysayers is the reality, and right in that middle. But yeah, I think opportunity-wise, I mean, it's such an exciting time in healthcare marketing. I love change. I think it presents opportunity. I think it creates fresh perspectives. It brings people out of the woodwork that you normally wouldn't be able to hear the value that they're able to come across because the perspectives are a lot of times hidden. I've just been having an absolute blast. For the first time, I think there's such a low barrier to participation in the healthcare marketing conversation, because it is new. And there's so many different functions, whether it's search trends being differentiated from the past 15, 20 years, or it's channel redistributions, or it's decentralization of your marketing department and the channels you're so used to using. But I think opportunities, if I were to take the pragmatic approach, I think efficiency is probably the biggest opportunity at hand. Because I think everybody, when they hear what's the opportunity in healthcare marketing, starts to talk about AI. And I think there's so much efficiency that can be had. But honestly, I think the biggest opportunity across the board is giving teams room to rethink and not go off the binder they were handed when they were first employed. And finally realizing that it is time to think fresh. And that's what we should have been doing all along. But now it gives them an excuse. It gives them an excuse to say, all right, look, I'm going to blend this quarter's results, but I get time to plan the future because now my C-suite sees it as an expectation or a requirement rather than maybe a little perk of the position. So I'm really happy to be seeing that. I think we're seeing some really cool, creative ideas coming out from those. So I'd say opportunity is honestly, as much as it doesn't feel like it, is breathing room and thinking room, because you have to. We're reinventing a little bit.
That's probably the first time I've heard it put that way, and I appreciate that. Like I can see that as an opportunity, and that feels like it makes sense. What about the flip side of this? What challenges are there? We did just kind of mention, like how this can lead us to just feeling in general, maybe overwhelmed or just wanting more confirmation that a direction we're going maybe is still the right direction. You mentioned like maybe it's the output of when we have that breathing room to think, sometimes we're going to say, you know what? It's time for that new direction. It's time to change. It's time to lean into one aspect of this and just go for it. What is that looking like to you in terms of the challenges that you're hearing from healthcare marketers?
Every time we go down to a conference, I think everybody kind of follows the similar conferences in healthcare marketing, HMPS, SHSMD, HCIC, and there's plenty more. But the common terminology I hear and agree with is everybody walks away feeling like they just drank through a fire hose for 3 days. And I think that's happening around the clock right now. And so I think everybody is seeing so many new ideas, so many new directions, so many schools of thought, so many very stark positions being taken by whether it be AI tech bro types or whether it be pragmatic down to earth 30-year legacy agency types. They're just trying to ingest. And I think the challenge is disseminating that information into something that's actionable is starting to become challenging. The dopamine hit you get on social today as a professional is very similar to the dopamine hit you get on TikTok from a consumer. It's just a lot to keep up on. And I think the biggest challenge is that we're all going to have to adapt to a very new level of discipline for what we let in and what we let take our time, because inevitably we are responsible for this quarter's results. We're responsible for the end of the year, but we're simultaneously expected to, on top of everything else that's changing, to ensure that we're building for the future, which I would argue is a full-time job in itself. And a lot of the organizations we're working with are doing just that, is that they are establishing dedicated teams to realize that they need to understand what's coming, but that it doesn't halt what has to be done today. And that's on top of everything else that's changing with privacy and HIPAA and FTC and state privacy regulations and consumer behaviors and new channels. And so, the marketing hat continues to get taller and taller, however many bills we're at this point.
Like you mentioned AIO, for instance, right? And if we're even talking about what's a distraction and what direction makes sense for any particular person or team out there, I'm thinking about it as a framework, right? a framework for how to process all those new bits of information that we are hearing every day, whether it is from a competitor or something that we saw somewhere else. I'm trying to learn how to still have the right framework to process the information, because I don't want to just say, well, that's a distraction automatically. I am still trying to think of what that triage looks like with the amount of information that's there. The fire hose analogy is perfect. You're right. Like it does feel like that every day now. And so how do you approach AI in general, either for yourself and your team or for clients when they're asking you about it?
Yeah. And I think something you touched on is so important, which is we don't want to just designate it as a distraction. How do we process through whether it is worthy of attention? But I think also a key point to that is when it starts to feel slow, it might just be because that's part of figuring it out, right? I mean, if you're trying to solve a problem, you really got to break down the KPIs to that problem, because AIO is a really good example, right? If your KPI is, I've got it figured out, you're not going to feel like you're succeeding for several years, most likely. And it's going to feel like you're running in place. But if your KPI is, I'm going to take the next best step, I'm connecting patients to care, I'm serving the patient. The competition isn't just the clinic down the road. The competition is the bias that gets in the way of somebody getting a colorectal cancer screening. How does AI help that happen? And so I think we definitely need to put the consumer or the patient forefront in our view to ensure that it is built for them. It's built for what we're trying to accomplish for them, and blend that with the business KPIs that leadership is passing down the line, most likely to all of these healthcare leaders, and just start answering the questions. Is it solving my goals now? And is it going to solve for problems or help me attain my goals in the future? And if the answer is yes, I think it's a worthy path to go and figure out, or at least go down the rabbit hole, if you will. But then you got the dead horse analogy, right? You've been riding something for a while. We're just not getting traction, and you could have been making traction elsewhere. We got to remember to bail off the horse from time to time. But I do think this is the long game. I think it's really keeping up on the trends. I don't like the word reacting, but I think inevitably we are reacting a lot right now. And I think there are some proactive steps you can take. But I think a lot of the proactive steps you can take is the preparedness to react, almost. Being sure that you have the teams in place to be nimble, to take advantage of what comes down the pike. And I don't think that's a new thought. I just think budgets are already tight. The next thing, or the last thing we need is another tactical team inside of our healthcare marketing departments. But then, to your question of how we're approaching it at TC, we take a pretty pragmatic view of AI, actionable, results-driven. We're a performance agency through and through. We're responsible for results. We're responsible for patient growth. And if AI can make something more efficient, if AI can make something even less costly at times, if AI can help us accomplish more throughout a year, great. I would say we balance the efficiency and innovation really well, with more emphasis on the efficiency side as of right now. Of course, we're exploring new ways of optimizations. We're exploring new ways of recognizing search behaviors. We're obviously testing those. But I think the most pragmatic way we've used AI is trying to reduce some of the red tape, trying to reduce some of the cumbersome, even project management operations that we've had over time, to help the clients feel at ease, connected, and moving forward at a faster rate without it feeling overwhelming. And I think that's been the powerhouse we've seen from AI so far. But we're an efficiency team first, I would say. And I think most people who are integrating AI fall into one of those two boats. You are either an efficiency kind of believer or an innovation believer. And you can be simultaneously both. The focus is very hard to do both. And so we tend to lean more towards the efficiency side as of right now, and focusing on what the data is telling us and what can be actionable. But also, I would say, because we have so many brands under management and so many different types of service lines and very variable levels of sophistication with those clients, those systems, et cetera, that determines the balance, right, of efficiency and innovation. There are plenty of teams that want to go and sink a big budget into figuring out how AI can help even their advertising dollars go further. And they're wanting to do those types of tests. So that's been pretty cool to see. I would say most hinge on, let's stick to the proven tactics. And I think you see these. The brands that emerge take big bets. And the brands that don't reinvent the wheel, there's nothing wrong with that. And I know people tend to villainize the people that don't always innovate and come up with the next iPhone. But honestly, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And the reality is that 99.9% of healthcare organizations aren't in a position to truly innovate. And I think people need to understand what their team structure is. It's not the batten down Jimmy's dreams to become president one day, but it really is. Sometimes it is taking a pragmatic approach to know where you live and know what your strengths are and know what you risk isn't just financials. You're talking about patients' care, their access, the doctors that are serving them and helping them become healthier. We've got to blend that. And obviously the larger budgets, the larger teams, the higher profit margin service lines are able to take a little bit more of the innovator's approach, I think. But I'd say that's, without getting too deep in the weeds, focus on efficiency as of right now and the proven methods of what we know about AIO, which luckily, as of right now, isn't really that contrasted with what great marketing has looked like for the past 5 years.
No, I like that. I mean, that is essentially a framework of understanding efficiency versus innovation and how much you can do at the same time of where your focus goes. So that's ideal. I mean, even just as a validating point of those listeners who are out there thinking, I've been trying to do both all at once. Why isn't this working? Which I would guess they're out there.
We had a few clients in the last couple of weeks, and there's nothing wrong with a master plan. Everybody wants a master plan, but the master plan very rarely is only tied to the actual goal our clients want to obtain. They also want kind of that 5-year vision. And a lot of clients don't realize that they're comparing their chapter 5 to somebody's chapter 17 oftentimes. So they're asking about getting into all these channels and these efficiencies and these innovative tactics, just some things that quite frankly, they don't have the sophistication for. And sometimes it's about being pragmatic and realizing like, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what we have capacity to take on. And realizing that until you've exhausted something as simple as paid search inside of Google, you might not want to be navigating to a rapid efficiency inside of Bing or developing your own AI optimization bidding algorithm internally because you don't want to trust an agency with it for the next 10 years. 2 + 2 doesn't always equal 4 in that regard.
It's an important distinction to make here. A couple other points to that as I'm just thinking through this. One of them is the team itself, typically a client maybe that you're serving or a team that's a partner with you, that CMO role in particular. I mean, everything comes down to that, or comes up to that rather, the CMO at a health system. How is that role changing from your view in terms of what they're asked to do with all the things we've just been talking about, all these changes, technology approaches, strategy, we're keeping everyone feeling like they're in a good spot, understanding frameworks. I mean, there's so many pieces to this on top of what their job already was to begin with. I always feel like I have empathy for that role. What are you seeing just from CMOs in particular in terms of like how their roles are changing?
I'm privileged to be able to see this from both sides of the table also. Most of our senior account managers were chief marketing officers at some type of system or healthcare organization. And so we're able to see, hey, what were you going through? And we have a few people that were looking to pull over from pretty large, well-known systems. And I would say, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of they probably do deserve some sympathy. I think I can have empathy for it because I've always had to wear so many hats. As a founder, I think, without getting too deep into what founder life is like, I mean, you just have to do everything. You have to be thinking on your feet. There is no, that's not my job title. And I think in a large corporate world, many positions do get to hide behind the job title and the job responsibilities. And I feel like CMO somehow at some point, I don't know, they just opened up the fences around that job description and said, well, anything that can be put in there will be, whether it's privacy expertise and now, bam, you're a legal expert, to data and analytics, bam, you're now a technology expert, integrating and sourcing SaaS products and MarTech standards and data governance. And, oh, by the way, you also have to differentiate our brand, make sure that we're hitting all of our KPIs, running ads, holding vendors accountable, managing a team. And I do think it got very overwhelming. And I think CMOs that I'm talking to, and it could be slightly biased because a lot of those that we're talking to have already agreed to hire an outsourced agency and or are wanting to come and join our team, is that they simultaneously like structure, realizing that it's semi-unattainable in a CMO role right now, or well-defined structure, and blending. I keep referring to that binder that gets handed. It's a running joke in our organization that people hire you for your creative mind and then they hand you a binder that tells you what to do. And there's nothing inherently wrong with having policies, procedures, and a strategy, but if you're hiring somebody to execute your strategy, hire somebody to execute your strategy. If you're hiring somebody to come up with the strategy, allow them to. And I think a lot of CMOs, especially in the big systems, see the paycheck, they see the level of authority that they're going to get, and they think they're going to have this creative control, only to be met with a lot of red tape, but while simultaneously being held accountable for things that tape wasn't built for, which is AI innovation and consumer behavior changes, and budgets aren't getting approved. And yet, I'm not going to say every CMO has perfect clarity into what's going to work, but I think a CMO by definition is a problem solver and a critical thinker. I mean, that has always been the I think that's always been the differentiation in marketing. A lot of people call it creativity or will tell you it's a creative thought process. I really think it's critical thinking and problem solving is what marketers have always just been the best at. And I think that's been semi-taken advantage of in the role by saying, well, here's another one. Here's another problem. And just keep chucking it at them. But I think overwhelmed, I think a lack of clear KPIs are a surefire way to burn a CMO out. I think people operate really well when at least they know what they're shooting for. And then red tape. Red tape has been probably the number one most talked about function that I hear is, we're coming up with all of these ideas because we're being mandated to come up with ideas to solve these problems, but we're met with either red tape, budget cuts, or a lack of vision from the C-suite where we can't take those to fruition. We can't test. People who critically think and problem solve very rarely get it right on the very first instance. So you have to have time to problem solve and figure out. And I think systems are getting maybe too locked down to where we're not allowing failure to occur, which I'm a true believer that failure is the absolute only way to figure out what works. And I know that because I've got the scar tissue to prove it. I've made every mistake I think there is in building an agency. I think I've made every mistake in launching campaigns across all kinds of service lines, and we've learned. And that's why we're so great at what we do. And I would like to see CMOs get that same level of freedom and autonomy. And I think that's the feedback we get from the CMOs that work for us currently is it's not that I'm held to lesser standards. It's that I have the autonomy to fail. And I have the autonomy to succeed through failure, which I think is so crucial. I think it's why you see sometimes, I've seen many chief failure officer positions coming about. I don't know if you've kind of seen that trend, but there's people putting together chief failure officer. Why? Because you lead to success by figuring out what doesn't work, right? I'd say that's the number one thing I'm hearing from CMOs. And then obviously privacy, the changes with AI and keeping up on that. But I think at a core, most of them from like a tactical problem or pain point is that they know what they want to do. They want to serve their communities. They want to serve their service areas. They want to connect patients to great care. And they want to know that they've got a team that backs their ability to figure out how to do that. And I think there needs to be big, bold, italicized and highlighted under the freedom to figure that out. And I think that's what maybe is lacking right now is they're given the freedom to go do it. They're not always given the freedom to, play the everything is figure outable card, which I think is kind of a pretense to being a marketer, to be honest.
Yeah, I would like that card. To close here, I always like to ask our guests what gives them hope for the future of healthcare in our country. And I'll tailor this a little bit for yours in terms of, you've been doing this a while. I would guess that there's something specific about the marketing side. You refer to it as when we do our jobs right, we're connecting people with the care they need. I don't know if that's the thing here, but what keeps you going? Like, what keeps you interested in this field? What gives you hope that hey, all of this is leading us to a better place? Healthcare is going to be in a better place. What gives you hope in terms of what's coming next for healthcare?
Got some strong opinions about healthcare, but I typically take the standpoint of, I think we all know healthcare has its challenges. I hope that everybody also knows that I don't think anybody would have designed it exactly this way. It's been a patchwork for the last 60 years that we've really been putting together. But I think most people in the healthcare space are incredibly mission driven. And the people that I talk to, I find most often the most incredible, talented and driven people in the space typically have just a really wonderful story behind them, something that drives them, something that is mission oriented. And what really gives me hope in healthcare marketing is that you never stand in the way of somebody that has experienced something so deeply that they've navigated their entire career based off of it. And I think those are the people that are holding positions of leadership in large health systems, small health systems, critical access hospitals, federally qualified health centers. And I think they're truly trying to solve a problem. And I think they genuinely do care. The challenge that I would just want to pose is making sure that we're not setting up infrastructure that gets in the way. I think the U.S. in general has always rose to the occasion to solve problems. And I would hate to see that beaten out of people because of so much red tape. And so, I think what gives me hope is that we've been through a lot and people are still fighting hard and they're working and they're driving and they're innovating. And it really hasn't stopped them, even though they may have been thwarted by budgets or COVID or the apocalypse or whatever else may have been thrown at them. People are still trudging, man. I think healthcare marketers are one of the most resilient groups of professionals out there, and I don't see it slowing many people down. We roll with the punches and we get the results when others can't. What we lead to. So I'll bet on that group all day long.
What a way to wrap us up here, Keaton. Thanks for joining today. Thanks for everything you're doing. Just, you can hear it in your voice. You care deeply about what you're doing here. Thanks for everything you're doing to make healthcare consumer first, and best of luck with everything you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. Appreciate it. Great talking.